Excuse me? You think you're too busy? I'm so lonely. Who do you think you are? After all I've done for you? All the other parents said it's okay. How can you call yourself a Christian? If any of that sounds familiar, then you're on a big guilt trip because you've set some boundaries. And this is where the rubber meets the road. So stay tuned if you feel bad for holding your ground. You're working really hard and prayerfully on improving your life and your relationships. You've been thoughtful and intentional about setting a boundary. Rather than understanding and cooperation, you've been met with anger, guilt messages, and maybe even retaliation. So you're beginning to doubt yourself and wonder if you're doing the right thing. Is it even worth the time and energy to hang in there and hold on to that boundary? Now, I can't answer that question for you. As your mentor, though, I can reassure you that setting and holding boundaries is intelligent and mature. And I can promise you to expect some kind of resistance. But that doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong or that you should let them go. So to help you think it through, I'm going to give you a quiz. And for each of the following 5 questions, just answer with a yes or a no. Think of this as a way to check in with your conscience to decide if you're doing the right thing by setting and holding a boundary. So grab something to write on or make a note in your app as we go through each of the 5 questions. Are you ready? Okay. Thinking about a boundary that you're about to set, or maybe you have set and you're experiencing some resistance, answer this question, yes or no. Here's the question. Does this boundary make people dependent on you? Yes or no? Now, a good boundary can offer someone the opportunity to grow in ability and maturity. But when people are pushed out of their comfort zone, they may retaliate out of the fear of change or the fear of failure. If the boundary you've set calls forth someone to grow, your best response to their resistance isn't to pull back. Instead, empathize with their distress, but make it clear it's their distress. Here's some ways that you can express your concern and support. For example, wow, it sounds like you're pretty mad that I decided not to help you with the event. Then you just stop. You let them vent. Let them explain what's going on in their mind so that they can feel like they're really heard. But notice, you're not offering to change anything. Here's another example. I understand you're worried about the project. I know it's a really tough one. And then you stop and let them vent, let it go on. You're expressing your concern and support. And here's one more example. I know it can be really frustrating that I'm not available. So what do you think are some of your other options? In that example, you're not changing your boundary, but you are offering to help them think of other solutions or other people that they could reach out to get help. If you've answered no to the first question, this boundary does not make someone dependent on me. Instead, it sets them free to grow, to figure something out, and take responsibility for their own life and problems. Then you're probably on the right track. Maybe this boundary also opens the door for someone else to step in and help, to shine in the moment and to be and feel needed. And that sounds like a fair boundary for me. Now here's question 2. Does this boundary interfere with God's best for you or the other person? Yes or no? Does this boundary interfere with God's best for you or the other person? What if you don't step in and loan the money, or finish the project, or fix the problem, or you fill in the blank? What do you imagine will happen? Well, if you're anything like me, I bet you expect the worst. I bet you don't imagine that someone, somehow, some way will come through. But you never wait around long enough to find out, do you? You pull back the boundary, convinced, see, I told you so. And that makes you what? The good daughter, the best friend, the hardest worker, the martyr for faithfulness and kindness? Maybe. But what if by not setting and holding to boundaries, you're interfering with God's best for yourself, for someone else? What if you're demonstrating a consistent lack of trust and faith in Jesus when he promised, I will never leave you or forsake you? And he didn't mean just you. He meant every person, including your husband, your mom, your dad, your daughter and son, your sister and brother, your in-laws, your neighbor, your friend, your boss, your coworker. He meant everyone he will never leave or forsake. Did you answer no, this boundary doesn't interfere with God's plan? In fact, it gets me out of his way. I trust him, and because I have prayerfully involved Jesus in setting these boundaries, I can confidently hold to them, if and until he tells me otherwise. Now let's move on to question 3. Thinking about a boundary, do you believe that you're responsible for how other people feel? Yes or no? Do you believe you're responsible for how other people feel or react to the boundary that you've set? Yes or no? Sometimes when we set boundaries with people we love, they hurt. When you're the one who rescued them from loneliness, financial responsibility, poor career and life choices, they're likely to feel the void that you used to fill. And it will be painful to watch. And you'll probably be hurt when they lash out in anger or if they blame and criticize you. But I want you to understand this. You're safe. The emotions they're feeling are just that. They're emotions. They're real. But they live, they exist in the other person. It's their hurt. It's her anger or his sadness. Think about it like the jeans or the sweater they have on. They're wearing the clothing, not you. Now, it can be really hard to be with someone's pain, but that's not a good reason to remove a boundary. If you answered no, you don't believe you are responsible for how other people feel, then you also understand that the person who's angry or hurt or resentful is the one with the problem, not you. You've done your best to live your life as a mature, strong, intelligent adult. You're trying to be courageous and looking after yourself and your family in the best way you can. And that's what you're supposed to do. On the other hand, it's their life, and they have the responsibility and the power to take care of themselves, not you. Another person's reaction is not a command for you to change your mind and let go of your boundary. And I recognize that this can be especially difficult for people pleasers who want to do something to take away another person's discomfort. But the only person who can console and comfort us in our fear, our anxiety, our anger, and any other pain we're feeling is Jesus. So if you love and care for the other person, pray for them and point them to Jesus. But don't pull away your boundary. Now here's question 4. Again, yes or no, thinking about the boundary you have in mind. Did you create this boundary to avoid your responsibility? Yes or no? Did you create this boundary to avoid responsibility? Okay, so let's face it. Life is busy and stressful, and sometimes we just get sick and tired. Fed up and angry, we create a boundary out of desperation. That's it. That's the last time I do anything for her. Or maybe frustrated with my husband for not treating me right, I get to decide the boundaries of our sex life, all by myself. Remember in my previous video, I explained that boundaries are not set to limit or diminish ourselves or any other person. We set boundaries to become the person God created us to be. So we should set boundaries prayerfully, asking Jesus to show us all He wants us to do for ourselves and for others. To step fully into our roles as a spouse, a parent, a daughter, my role as an employee or a friend, a neighbor, whatever. Can you truthfully answer, no, I didn't set this boundary to avoid my God-given responsibilities. I'm setting the boundary and holding to it so I can fulfill the vision and purpose God has for my life. Then celebrate taking this important step of personal and spiritual maturity and pray for continued courage and strength to do the right thing, even when it's not popular or present. Now here's the last question. Does holding this boundary create a physical danger or threat? Yes or no? Does holding this boundary create a physical danger or threat? As your mentor, it wouldn't be responsible of me if I don't acknowledge that setting and holding boundaries can put you at risk. Abusive spouses sometimes won't take no for an answer. Men, women, children, and the elderly who try to set limits are subject to physical and emotional abuse. If you're in this situation, find professional help to help you set limits and protect yourself. Find a counselor, call people in your church, call the police if you are in danger. And if you don't know who to call or what to do, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline number at 800-799-SAFE. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233. If you're in danger or afraid that you will be, don't allow this to go on. Seek help. Now, thinking about the specific boundary that you've set in place or are thinking about setting in place, if you're experiencing or anticipating pushback, here's the questions to ask yourself. Does the boundary make people dependent on me? Yes or no? Does the boundary interfere with God's best for everyone? Yes or no? Do I believe I am responsible for other people's feelings? Yes or no? Did I create this boundary to avoid responsibility? Yes or no? Does holding this boundary create a physical danger or threat? Yes or no? If you've answered no to these questions, that's a signal that you're setting legitimate boundaries that are worth holding to. So give it some time. Notice the impacts. Is it producing the change that you're intending? What are you learning about yourself and others? What are you noticing about the faithfulness of God? And exercise patience and compassion. We all need time to adjust to new roles and responsibilities that we have to take on. And we need time to process emotions and learn to handle ourselves when things don't go our way. Now, I don't know what God's telling you about boundaries, but I do know that He's all for them. He teaches about boundaries in all areas of our life: food, sex, marriage, relationships, prayer. He did it for a good reason. He loves us. He wants to protect us, and He wants the best for us. We can never be who we are created to be without boundaries. So don't let guilt trips and self-doubt hold you back from setting and holding boundaries. I'm your mentor, Jane. Thank you for watching.